Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode, I believe is 4 of my mini album basics series. So today we're going to be talking about flaps and pockets, okay? We're going to get into maybe some things that I have to show you how to mat, possibly in this video. I'm not sure yet. But so I wanted you to be able to like get your pattern papers pulled if you're working kind of like on an album, because these will eventually become, full albums. So for my traditional style album, so with the hinged binding and the pocket pages, so the one that's a little bit, more rectangular, I'm going to use the Simple Stories Sunshine and Blue Skies paper pad. It's like a summery paper pad. It's a little bit older, if I'm not mistaken, but you can use whatever paper pad you like. I just like that it has like a couple of cut-aparts, things like that. It's super pretty, so that's the one we're going to use. And then for our waterfall hinge book, we're going to use Magical Forest from La La Land Crafts. So I kind of think this is really cute for summer. So I want to show you the papers here. So really, really cool, beautiful papers. Super excited to work with this one as well. So that's Magical Forest by La La Land Crafts. And this one I know is available, so I'll link it below for you guys, okay? So we're going to start with our traditional binding book with the pocket pages. And we're going to talk about our flaps and our pockets, okay? So basically the rule is if you want your flap to completely cover the page you're working on so that it doesn't look like there's, kind of a page underneath it necessarily, you want to do it so this page measures 7 3/4 wide and 5 1/4 tall, okay? So my flap, because I want it to be going horizontal, measures 5 3/4 tall and 7 3/4 wide. The reason it is 5 3/4 tall and our page is 5 1/4 tall is because we have to be able to flip it. So we have to add a hinge, okay? So I added 1/2 inch for the hinge. So then on the 5 3/4 side, we score at 1/2 inch, and that gives us our hinge, okay? So if we fold and burnish on that score line, now when we place it on here, it is the exact same size as our page, okay? So then when we place it on here, it's the exact same size as our page, so people will be surprised to flip it up and find more photo space underneath, okay? Now, we're going to put this piece aside. We will attach it in a moment, but we're just going to go to the other, let's just go to page 3. So on this page, we're going to have our flap coming from the side versus from the top, okay? So this one measures 5 1/4 because our page is 5 1/4 inches tall by 8 1/4. Now our page is 7 3/4 wide, so we need another 1/2 inch, which brings us to 8 1/4. And on the 8 1/4 side, we score at 1/2 inch. So that when we fold this onto our page, it's going to be the exact same size as our page. So let's fold and burnish that, okay? Now, before we attach these into the book, I'm going to talk to you about 2 different basic pockets. So these are basic pockets, okay? So the first style of pocket we're going to talk about is going to go onto this page here. It's going to go onto the 5 1/4 by 8 1/4 flap. So it's our side opening versus top opening flap. So our piece of cardstock measures 6 1/4 by 4 1/2 because this is 5 1/4 tall. So in order to have a 1/2 inch hinge space on both sides, we have to go up an inch. So with your pockets, you're always going to go up an inch, okay? So if I have a flap that's, 3 3/4, I'm going to want to cut my pocket width to 4 3/4. And the height is really like, it can be any height you want. If you wanted to just barely have an edge here, you can have it come all the way to 6 3/4. That's totally, the pocket height is optional. The width is not. It always has to be an inch larger so that you have 1/2 inch on each side, okay? So our height is 6 1/4. So our height is 5 1/4. So our pocket needs to be 6 1/4, okay? Then I cut mine 4 1/2 high because I want a 4-inch pocket. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do pockets, and then I'll tell you which one I prefer personally. So for this one, so it measures 6 1/4 by 4 1/2. This is the traditional pocket style, okay? So on the 6 1/4 side, you're going to score it 1/2 inch, flip it in your scoreboard and score it 1/2 inch, okay? So you have 1/2 inch on both sides. Then on the 4 1/2 inch side, you're just going to score at 1/2 inch on one side, okay? Then already now, you can grab your scissor, and where these 2 score lines intersect, we need to snip across just like this, okay? So same thing here. Snip across just like that. Then we can go ahead and fold and burnish our score lines. Just like this, all right? Then I like to also burnish from the top, just because I think it gives it a nice flat, makes it easier to attach. Okay. All right, so I'm going to attach my pocket along the side of the flap that doesn't have the hinge, okay? I'm gonna have it here. I'm gonna attach my flap on this side. So this is the flap that was 5 1/4 by 8 1/4, and we scored it at 1/2 inch on the 8 1/4 side. I'm gonna attach it to the page along the front, along the opening side of the page, because I want to add as little bulk along the spine on this style of album as possible. You want to leave all the bulk on the outside as much as possible. Then I'm going to attach my pocket on this side that doesn't have that attaching flap, okay? So I'm going to start by putting glue just on this bottom 1/2 inch section. That's the only place I'm going to put it for now. And I'm just going to attach it right along the bottom, and it should go all the way to the bottom and all the way to both sides. And always pick it up and adjust it if you need to. And then I'm going to burnish that just like this. All right, so the biggest reason I don't love this method is unless, like once these are attached down, unless you put your pattern paper or your pattern paper or your matting or whatever all the way down into this pocket to cover this little hinge down here, my inserts are always getting stuck and they won't go to the bottom of the pocket. So there is a solve for this, okay? So what I do is I use Scotch tape or just this, present wrapping tape or whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to put it across that bottom hinge here. And you can burnish it on. So that now when I have these closed and I try to slide my insert, it goes all the way down smoothly because that is covered. All right, now I'm going to show you in the next pocket how to completely skip this step. But this is one way of doing it if you want the full pocket inside, okay? So now we're going to put our glue on our 2 side hinges. to close our pocket up. Just like this. And then we can burnish. Give it a good burnish. And now we slide our insert and it goes all the way to the bottom without any issues. Okay, so now let's go ahead and attach this to our page. So I'm going to open this flap, this 1/2 inch flap, and I'm going to miter. So we've talked about mitering, but from the score line out, we're just going to cut at a diagonal. Do not cut into the score line. All right, and we can burnish it one more time so it's nice and flat. And add our glue. And then you can turn your book to whatever position is comfortable for you. And I'm going to attach it to the outside edge of my page. So I'm attaching it to page 3 here, but you can attach yours wherever you want. I'm going to burnish. And then we can open it up and burnish it. All right, so a page like this is going to need a closure. I find that all flaps that are not from the top to the bottom, which, you know, just gravity helps them to stay closed, they need a closure. So whatever kind of closure that is for you is perfect. We're going to work on that in a closure video. I would probably use a magnet here, just a simple magnet closure, but I will do a separate part of this series that's all about closures, and then we'll talk about that in that video. But that is the side flap with the traditional pocket. Okay, now let's go to page 1, and we are going to do the top flap with kind of a different style pocket. So remember, our top flap was 5 3/4 by 7 1/4. So it's the flap that comes down from the top. And on the 5 3/4 side, we scored it 1/2 inch. So our pocket is going to go across this way now. So it's going to go across the width of our page. Whereas here, it went on the height of our page. So what I did is I want my pocket to be 3 inches tall. So with this style, you don't do a bottom flap. So I just cut it at 3 inches. And then my width is 8 3/4 because my flap is 7 3/4. So it needs to be an inch larger. That never changes with pockets. All right, so then on the 8 3/4 side, I scored it 1/2 inch, flipped it in the scoreboard and scored it 1/2 inch. Now I'm going to fold and burnish those 1/2 inch score lines. And it's going to go across the bottom of my pocket right here. So I'm going to add glue to one of my side flaps. And I'm going to place it all the way to the bottom and all the way to the side of my flap. Just like this. All right. Then we can open it, and now we need to put glue on this flap here. And then we also need to close up the bottom of our pocket. So you could do a little strip of tape, no more than 1/8 of an inch. Or you could put a bead of glue across the bottom like I am. And then that's just going to close down. Just like this. And then we just burnish because we really want to make sure we burnish that glue nicely across the bottom so it closes up our page. All right, so now when we go to put an insert into this pocket, it's not going to get stuck anywhere. However, you're going to lose that 1/8 of an inch of space at the bottom Whereas with this style, it goes all the way to the bottom. So you have that full 7 3/4 inch space in here. All right. Now you do have the extra step of putting the tape on that hinge, which is really not that big of a deal, but I prefer this method because honestly, inserts can be any size. They don't have to be the full, the full depth of the pocket. So for me personally, I much prefer this just because I don't like the headache of it getting stuck and bonking. And yes, there is a tape fix for that, which is fantastic. It works really well, but I prefer this style of pocket regardless, okay? So again, we're gonna attach this to the page, but we need to miter this hinge. Just like this. And then we will attach it to this front here. Can just burnish one more time. You can never burnish too much. All right, and I'm going to attach it all the way to the top of my page and all the way to the outside edge. You can always check from the back, make sure it's in line. And we can also burnish it from the back. All right, so now we have a flap that comes up. From the bottom. And this one, as you can see, is not going to need a closure because even when this book is closed, that's not, it's not doing anything because it's gravity is just helping it stay down. Whereas you can see this one, our one that comes in from the side, is popping open. So that one's going to need a closure. So we have our pockets here and our flap that comes up. Then on this one, we have our pocket on the side and our flap that comes to the side. Okay, so I hope that helps you guys with pockets and flaps. The next video, I'm actually going to go into fancier type pockets, so angle pockets, pockets with the envelope punch board, things like that. That'll be the next installment of this series. All right, guys, so I hope you enjoyed seeing that. I hope you learned something, and I will see you guys all in the next one. If you haven't yet, I would love if you would like and subscribe. That would be fantastic, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye-bye.